Welcome, welcome, welcome to Civility 360, the platform for all things civility, where civility, influence, and action are our deliverables. Tonight, we have the opportunity to bring to you yet another panel from hostility to civility, a cultural understanding of race and racism. Thank you so much for joining us. We want you to, as you chime in, let us know what city, what state, what country or region that you're chiming in from. If you have questions, please, ma'am, please, sir, make sure that you drop them in the actual chat box here on the Civility 360 page. And as you do so, we will be sure to answer them. We have a lot of ground that we're going to cover today, and we are here for you. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I am your host, Professor Burnett A. Joseph, joined by my good friend, the global world civility leader, Sir Clyde Rivers. How are you doing tonight, my friend?
Professor Burnett, every time I have the pleasure to be around you, I know the world's changing, my friend. So I'm just happy to be here tonight with you and the dear people we have on the panel, sir.
Absolutely. We are going to have a dynamic time. Before we get started, sir, I just want the listening and the viewing audience to know how this all came about. What is it all about and what kind of ground we're going to cover today? So as we talk about from hostility to civility, a cultural understanding of race and racism, can you share with the listening and viewing audience what that actually mean and where it actually came from?
Yeah. What as I was watching all these things in the world, I'm watching George Floyd and Mr. Brooks last week. There's hostility happens, and at some point you got to bring it to ground level. At some point, the emotion will not be as strong, but we need the movement to be as strong.
Yes.
If we need to have justice sought, it doesn't need to be an emotional thing. It needs to be something that is sustainable after the cameras aren't there anymore.
Come on,
so
sir.
From hostility to civility is our solutions on how to change the world and how to deal with injustice. And hear this, every institution needs to be right. So we need 7.8 billion people to adopt the philosophy of civility. So as we're here, we're looking at every issue, but we want solutions. And that's where we get to civility. And that's why we have an amazing panel tonight, Professor Burnett.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Sir Clyde Rivers. I know many people are often asking, what's civility? What is civility? What are they talking about? Civility in action. What is hostility to civility? Okay, we're talking about a cultural understanding. Well, this is why you are here today. If you are joining us, again, we want to know what city, what state, what region, what country you may be chiming in from. And if you have questions, please, by all means, make sure that you drop them on the chat of the main feed, which is Civility 360. All right, so let's talk about who we will have on the panel today. Now, we have the opportunity to bring in a person that we all know and have worked with and have seen the dynamics of her work. It's Dr. Linda Lara. Tell us a little bit about Dr. Linda.
My goodness, if I had a puddle of water, I would lay it out and that woman could walk across it. She is a leading voice. She is our USA Civility Woman of the Year. Mm-hmm. And what her and her husband do, they work with kids that have 4 F's in the education system, and they have successfully turned these kids' life around. That's why she's our USA 2020 Civility Icon of the Year for the USA. She's phenomenal.
Wow. That's what I'm talking about. And then we have Dr. Rebecca Harper. Tell us a little bit about Dr. Rebecca.
Oh, my goodness. Dr. Rebecca Harper is one of the brilliant minds in this world. If you ever have the ability to spend time with Dr. Harper, man, bring a notepad. She's an encyclopedia of wisdom. We're honored to have her in with us.
My. That's what I'm talking about. We're heating up. We're heating up. And then we have Dr. Phineas Kanithia. Talk to us about him.
This guy, ladies, you're in for a treat. One of the brilliant minds that he's written a book called From Dreaming to Becoming. Mm-hmm. And he is one of the experts in the world that can help you walk your destiny out. Just a phenomenal. He's a machine.
Wow. And then we have Dr. Sharon Anderson. Talk to us about her.
Sharon Anderson, a lawyer, Georgetown, Harvard. I actually heard her speak at a place. The wisdom she has to bring true reform. We need her on any panel in the world. That's my friend, Dr. Sharon Anderson. Come on, Professor.
Absolutely. Awesome. And then we have our special guest, Jacqueline Edwards. Tell us a little bit about her.
She is the president of the Association of Black Law Enforcers out of Canada. Mm-hmm. And she's also one of the heads of correction. One of the most genuine spirits that knows how to actually solve these problems. And you know what? We are never here to actually beat anyone up. We are never here to pick on a race. We're never here to pick on law enforcement. We're here for solutions. We're here for, if there's a problem, we're going to look at it very straight, but straight answers. So it's an honor to have Jackie with us.
Absolutely. Well, listen, folks, as you've already heard, we are here to bring, and as we have assembled, a world-class team from all around the world to talk about this topic. I'm talking about from hostility to civility, a cultural understanding of race and racism. We have such a great panel. I don't even necessarily know where to begin. I think we should just go ahead and let me see. Who do we want to go with first, Sir Clyde?
Let's go with Dr. Sharon Anderson.
All right. Here we go. Coming to the stage, we have Dr. Sharon Anderson. I'm talking about a phenomenal woman who actually has a wealth of knowledge. Welcome, if you would, with me, Dr. Sharon Anderson.
Amen. It's an honor to be here with both of you today to talk about such a needed topic. To discuss. It's time for change. It's time for civility to take the forefront of everyone's life. And so it's an incredible honor to be here with you. And I'm very excited about the discussion and about the information that will be shared.
Yes. Well, thank you for joining us. We really do appreciate you. I know those who will be watching are like, okay, guys, all right, we're ready. Let's get to this panel. So, Dr. Sharon, I have a couple of questions for you, and please take your time as you answer them. But as we are dealing with the state of the world today, let me ask you this question. What are some reforms that we think that we can actually enact from all of the mess that we have seen thus far in our world? Now, we're not picking on any city or state or anything like that. We're just saying, as a collective, what are some reforms that we think that we can enact?
Absolutely. Thank you. And that's a wonderful question. And as God would have it, I think wonderful to send to me because I wear a number of different hats. I'm a pastor, a professor, I'm an attorney. I have my own business and I do business strategy, organizational development, and training. I've taught emotional intelligence in correctional institutions. I've taught at certainly the law school level. I've taught theology, and Dr. Rivers was one of my students in the Primus University of Theology. And so I've taught on various different levels. And so clearly from a legal perspective, what we see happening is important. We need legislative reform. We need legal reform. We need to hold those that are making the wrong decisions accountable. And the lack of accountability has been one of the greatest issues that we have experienced in this discussion of hostility and racism, because we see one group of people getting treated one way when something happens and another being treated another way. An example, we see the young man who went in and shot up a church full of individuals taken to Burger King. And then we see someone else who fell asleep because they were drunk, shot dead in the back. Where had the response been the same, we would have expected, and we would have seen the individual either being called an Uber, being taken home, being given an opportunity, just like this other person was given an opportunity. And so holding people accountable is critical, and we have not done that. So from a legislative perspective, we have to have that reform. And so we have to do away with chokeholds. We have to do something with the police unions and the wall that has been present for us failing to be able to hold officers accountable when we make the mistakes. And then we have to look at the institutional racism that we see and how people are treated disparately because of their color. So I was reading something just recently. There was an example of a young man, young black man, young white man. They committed the same crime. The white man for stealing something with the same sentencing guidelines got 2 years. The African-American young man got 10 years. And so legislative reform is critical, but that is not enough. And right now we're speaking a lot about legislative reform, but we're not looking or reminding ourselves, and this is the professor's hat, that education is key. The timeline or continuum that I think is critical is still education, prevention, intervention, and then deterrence. We already have murder charges on the books. So deterrence is not the only thing that's going to create the change that we need. And so we're focusing a lot, and we're hearing a lot about the legislative reforms. And we hear a lot of people speaking, well, we've talked a lot, we've already had conversations about it. We need to take the deterrent action. But indeed, what I believe is that we really haven't talked about it enough. We have not done a consistent amount of education as it relates to humanity, as it relates to civility, as it relates to caring about someone who doesn't look like you, as it relates to breaking down those barriers. We don't teach about slavery anymore in education. We don't teach civility anymore in higher education or in secondary education or lower education. And so looking at it as a continuum and something that is consistent is key. So reform cannot just be on either end of the spectrum. It has to be a continuum, and we have to spend resources, time, and energy into a continuous process so that we can see change.
That's good. Professor, I have a question for you. Dr. Anderson, always a pleasure to have you anywhere around. You're fantastic.
Amen.
I have a question for you. Think about the Constitution of the United States of America. When it was created, I was considered property.
That's right.
So was the Constitution made with us in mind?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It wasn't. And so that's why we're seeing what we're seeing and have seen. And that's why there's not been any change, because we were not, African Americans were considered property. We were not considered when the Constitution was written. So we went from slavery, and then we went to, we see what we went through during the civil rights, segregation, and now we're right back to where we were. And from the beginning, we're enslaved in a different way, institutionally enslaved, economically enslaved, educationally enslaved. We are still being treated as second-class citizens because we are not consistently looking at ways to change and make reform or reparation. And reparation is another thing that I think that we need to talk about. I was sitting and listening to a conversation on yesterday, and in my church, we had a panel discussion about it. And one thing that I think that we're forgetting is that there has been trauma. There has been trauma. And a story was told about a young man who went over to, I believe it was Israel, but they went into a church that had been, it was a relic, and it was the last piece of a building that was during the Crusades. And they were told that they couldn't say crusade loudly because it was still something that within that environment was offensive, and it was still too traumatic. And if it's traumatic for something that happened, the Crusades was what, thousands of years ago. We're 60s, right? Less than 2 decades ago. We're still dealing with the trauma. Slavery wasn't thousands of years ago. We're still dealing with the trauma. So in addition to just legislative reform, legal reform, looking at writing the Constitution in a way that does include us, we also have to look at the trauma that we have experienced as African Americans, as a result of the racism, as a result of segregation, as a result of slavery, and look at how we are addressing that trauma. And instead of addressing the trauma, what we're doing is ignoring it. We're told to get over it. We're told to find a way to work together, where those that are telling us to find a way to work together aren't finding ways to work together with us. So in addition to just the paper, the reason why I got into the conversation and the study of civility is what sometimes we're missing is this is also about the human heart. You can't tell someone, don't be racist anymore. You just can't tell them that. You can't write a law and expect someone that they're going to change their behavior overnight. It's about the human heart. And so this platform, and thank God for you, Dr. Rivers and Dr. V, publishing my book and helping me to get this out. This whole platform of emotional civility is so important to me because we have to start looking at the human heart. How do we begin to touch people, to get them to understand why they should act a certain way? And once we start dealing with the human heart, then we can talk about them applying the standards that we're beginning to talk about setting. You can have standards all day long. We have them on the books now. If you don't begin to address the human heart, through education, prevention, intervention, then reform is not going to make a difference. Reform is not going to make a difference. So, and one of the different aspects of reform that Dr. Rivers and I were talking about was even having a civility practitioner track. And so teaching people how to be civil. It sounds ridiculous that we would have to do that, but the recent events, and God has exposed it, tells us that we do have to get back to the standard and the basics. We as human beings created by God, we were born equal. We were not born racist. Amen. We were not born racist. We were taught racism. We were taught inequality. We were taught to hate. God did not create us like that. And so we have to unteach that. And we have to take the time to unteach that. And we have to do that at every level. It's not just putting it in an elementary school education just to say that we did it. We have human beings, adult human beings in all areas, not just in the police force. We have it in corrections, we have it in the legal system, we have it in the judicial system. And we have to reteach how people think and how people feel. And that is exactly what this concept of emotional civility is. Emotional civility, as we define it, Dr. Rivers, right, is that lane between your heart and your head. And so where on that heart and your head does that filter say stop? If indeed that was taught in a police academy, then when the man had his knee on Mr. Floyd's neck, that filter would have kicked in and said, stop. If that was taught then the police officer, before he decided to arrest the man who clearly was having an issue, would have said, let's call an Uber, let's get you home. And so the teaching, education, prevention, and intervention is key. And writing the Constitution, I agree with it. Dealing with legal reform, I applaud it. But if we don't get back to the basics in intervening and beginning to get to that, we will never change. We'll be we'll have a moment, we'll have a movement, but the movement will end, and we'll be right back to where we are now in the next 5 or 10 years.
Absolutely. I love everything that you've said thus far, Dr. Sharon, and I'm super excited that the world will know more about emotional civility. And as we move forward, as we've stated in the beginning, we are not here simply for dialogue. We're here for solutions. So help us, if you would, from an emotional civility standpoint and the plethora of experience that you have, what are some solutions that you think would be good for this panel and for the world that is watching, that we can actually enact like today?
Right. Exactly. So throughout, in every different platform. So I'm creating a curriculum for law enforcement. I'm creating a curriculum for corporate America. I'm creating a curriculum for law firms. And so in every area where we live, work, and play, there should be a curriculum that deals with how people process their emotions. And I know we've heard about the concept of emotional intelligence, and emotional intelligence is heart to head. So it's how you think and about your emotions. Emotional civility, which is what we've developed, is how you act on your emotions, or obviously should not act. So one of the solutions is having obviously that curriculum in place. And what we've seen in the past is they're one-offs. So they have diversity and inclusion officers in a lot of the corporations and the big law firms and in law enforcement. They do have sensitivity training, but they're one-off. And what I mean by that is you do it once and that's it. Maybe you revisit it again, but that's it. And this needs to be consistent, because change does not happen overnight. If someone is 40 years old and they've lived in a house where they've been taught to hate Black people, a law in the book saying that you could go to jail if you treat a Black person wrong in the police force is not going to be enough, because that filter is not going to be there to allow them to process their emotions correctly. And so, again, we're talking hostility to civility. When we talk about emotional civility in this curriculum, and the solution is implementing these training programs in all of these areas, we want to develop the emotional and spiritual stamina of individuals so that when an offense comes, right? It's easy when everything's good. But when an offense comes, how are they going to process that offense? Are they going to process it emotionally, or are they going to process it with wisdom? And wisdom comes from God, and God treats everyone equally. And so the curriculum that we're developing, and the curriculum that has to be implemented, and the training that has to be implemented in all of these areas will teach people how to respond in an emotionally civil way. And it seems absolutely ridiculous. People probably are listening and saying, why would we need this? God has exposed why we need this. Because if we did not need this, we would not be having this discussion. There would not be people rioting. It's beyond racism. It's something that's internally broken that needs to be fixed on a humanity level. And so while we're going to talk about cultural differences, and we're going to teach about cultural differences, and we're going to teach about respect again, we have to get to the individual human existence, and find out why you, Professor Joseph, feel one way versus you, Sir Clyde Rivers. And all too often, all of our training, our sensitivity training, it's very general. And again, in our systems, we're doing it just to say. that we've done it, but we're not doing it to create impact and change. So that's one very big, important solution that I think is necessary, and it goes back to education and information.
Absolutely. So education from a curriculum for all levels, not just one. I've often said this, Dr. Sharon, you know what? We've got to educate our people how to deal with police.
Absolutely.
We have to educate the police how to deal with people.
Yes.
We've got to educate society how to see one another.
That's right.
We're talking the human factor.
That's right.
I see all of this as a humanity issue.
Absolutely.
If I see you as I see myself, I'm not going to harm myself.
That's correct.
If I see you as a husband, as a father, as a mother, as a sister, as an aunt, as a grandmother, I'm not going to be prepared to take your life.
That's right. That's right.
That we'll get into a little bit later in terms of de-escalation and things of that nature. But from the emotional civility side, I say we do have to get back to basics. We do have to help our society as a whole.
Yes.
Let me say it this way. If what we were doing was already working, we wouldn't be where we are today.
That's
the mindset and the mentality that got us into what we're in is not the same mindset that is going to get us out. So I'm grateful and thankful for this type of dialogue. I'm grateful and thankful. And I like how you said it. It is good to have education. It is good to have prevention. It is good to have the legal side. It is good to have a deterrence, but we've got to bring all of this together.
Yes.
So that we're not back here 5 years from now. We're not seeing, consistency in the wrong direction.
That's right.
We want to be an interrupter, if you would,
for
what is going on in our world today. Enough is enough. Let's come to the table. Let's get it right. And what we must understand, and we will also cover this a little bit later, is we have to make sure that we're not playing with our emotions by expecting change to happen tomorrow.
Overnight. That's right. That's right. We have to manage expectations.
That we must manage. And when we say that, I know it will turn a lot of people off. But the truth is, it took a long time for us to get where we are today.
Right.
And it's going to take some time as we all get together and do our part to get into the right track.
Correct.
So thank you. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. Thank you. It's been a pleasure. And I really do think that this is a tremendous and a phenomenal platform. And I really do think that we can make a difference. And I'm excited to work with everyone to do that because I know that it can happen. If we're dedicated enough, if we're persistent enough, God has given us this time and this subject matter and the desire and the passion for such a time as this. This is something that's been in our spirits for a while, and it's now manifesting. And we are going to help create that change that's necessary in this world, because it is a global issue, right, Dr. Rivers? It's a global issue. It is not just an issue that emanates from certain areas of the United States of America. We've seen the response globally to those issues. And I will just add this, the God had given me this word about the beauty of the quarantine. And every time I'm on whatever, I've been talking about it because we've really been in this cocoon. We haven't been able to go out. And this is where God has called us to get into ourselves and with him to pray about where and what he wants to do to be effective for him in the kingdom. And so as we emerge as a caterpillar emerges from a cocoon to fly as a butterfly, while they're in the cocoon, people think that the caterpillar is just sitting there waiting to come out, but he's spinning, he's taking in information, he's eating, he's doing all of those things that's necessary so that when he does emerge, he can emerge whole, he can emerge safe, and he can emerge to do what God has called us to do. So for those who are listening on the line, God is preparing you to become a force in this world for such a time as this. It's going to take everyone It's going to take everyone. And so utilize the time that God has given us during this quarantine, during this cocoon, during what I've called this divine cocoon, to get the information, to learn about what it is that you can do to be effective for him, so that we as a people can begin to combat this issue, because it affects everyone. It's affecting everyone. It might not be your father that passed, or your father that was shot, or your brother that was shot, but it has affected all of us. And this pandemic put us all on the same playing field, because the pandemic didn't care whether you were black, white, blue, green, Chinese, African. The pandemic hit everyone the same way and at the same time. So as a result of that, we're all on this level playing field, having to address an issue which is not a physical issue as the pandemic, but really a spiritual issue and a humanity issue and a matter of the heart. So that if we all could take this time during this season to look at how we can be impactful for God, to address these issues of racism, to address these issues of humanity, we can do it, and we can do it together. And the solutions are real and they are effective. And Civility is just one phenomenal platform that I think will change the face of our nation and our world for God, because that God is love. God is love, and God is peace, and God is joy, and God doesn't see color. He says that we are one body, many members. And the nose needs the eye, and the eye needs the mouth, and the ear needs the arm. It is ineffective as a body if one is cut off. And so getting back to those principles of oneness and unity is what Civility is all about.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Amen.
Thank you.
Amen.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Sharon.
Thank
yes,
you.
Indeed. Yes, indeed. All right. Well, we have just began, folks, and I hope that you're picking up what is being put down. We are talking about, from hostility to civility. Many people have hit me up, Dr. Rivers, from the moment that we put this out. Like, wait a minute, help me to understand how civility is going to change everything. And here is my response. Sometimes you have to help people to see the unseen. When we as a world are civil, all our problems will go away. Civility truly is the engine that makes the world go round. How I see you is what changes this world. How I act towards you is what changes this world. How I teach my children and eventually my children's children is what make this world go round. So when we see ourselves and ask, how can civility make a difference? I turn that question around and say, in the absence of civility, there is turmoil and chaos.
Wow.
So today, I want people to know and to understand how important civility is in every industry and in every area of life. So,
Man,
talk
Professor,
to us.
let me, you see, again, I have a biblical worldview. God made no one by mistake. So 7.8 billion people are the answer for 7.8 billion people. So God, he didn't create any spare parts. So what happens, we have to understand that we need everybody working at full capacity. We don't need people marginalized. We don't need people put in the back. We don't need people dehumanized. You see, the whole key to the world is this. We can never let people be dehumanized again, because as people are dehumanized, then it gives cultures in other countries the ability to get rid of the non-human. And that's been every civil war in countries. If you look at the underlying cause, a group of people were being dehumanized. They were considered not humans. So our battle is to make sure that 7.8 billion people are considered humans 365 days of the year, and we will see transformation.
Absolutely, absolutely. And transformation truly does start within. How you see yourself and what you do with what you see will determine the life that you actually live.
Absolutely.
Listen, this is one thing that I know. It's not what other people say about you that matters most or that you listen to the most. It's the words that you say about yourself.
Yes.
So today, we want you to lift up your eyes, lift up your head, and speak highly of you. And as you do, you will understand why we're moving from hostility to civility. There's hostility because histories are colliding. There's hostility because we have to debunk or defunct mentalities.
Yeah.
There's hostility because there's some myths that need to be busted. I hope that you all are picking up what we're putting down today. All right, Sir Clyde Rivers, who is up next? Who are we bringing to the table?
Let's go with Phineas, Dr. Phineas Kenethia, my dear friend.
All right. Let's bring in Dr. Phineas Kenethia to the panel. Dr. Kenethia, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing awesome. It is so exciting to be with you all tonight and to be bringing our voice to an issue that is long overdue. I'm so honored to be in the panel with you, Sir Clyde and Professor Brennan. It's good to be with you today. I appreciate this opportunity.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. We are super excited to have you. And I don't want to belabor the time, Dr. Kenethia. I want to dive on in. Let's talk a little bit about the topic that we're discussing today. How do you or how do we deal with the reality of systemic racism? Systemic racism.
Yeah. So, and it's interesting you say that because you've asked that, because I tell people that racism, you know, a lot of people say I've not experienced racism, and racism runs deep at the core of this country. In fact, when you look back at some of the institutional laws and legislation that has been put out, whether you're talking about things like the Jim Crow laws, you're talking about redlining, or things that have happened like the war on drugs, you know, and the whole platform of law and order, all that was geared towards the disenfranchising of a certain people group. And here's the thing: I want to agree with what we've just been talking about, because the reality of the issue is this is a heart issue. This is a core. The problem we face, Albert Einstein said, the problem we face cannot be solved at the same level of thinking they were created. And what's happening is we are trying to change policy, but we've not changed the heart issues. And that's the core. Until people have a heart transplant, until people begin to see, you know, when you look at the scripture in Genesis 1:26, God says, let us make man in our image and in our likeness. The word likeness there, that word is a word equity. That word is a word equality. And so God created everyone equal. So every life, just like Dr. Sir Clyde teaches, and we stand on this, every life matters to God. And so what has happened is that the institutions that were created because as people of color, as Black people, were not regarded as human beings. We open up by talking about that. And because you're not regarded as a human being, then we were considered a third. We were considered property. So we were considered a third. So we were not counted as true human beings. And what has happened is that particular dehumanization has continued to propagate. And the thing about racism is highly adaptive. And that's why it's so complex that we cannot resolve it by simplistic solutions. This is something that we have to go back to the heart of the issue and also look at the institutions that have been set with that in mind. And until I think for the institutions to change, until we sit at the table and have voice at the table, these things will continue to propagate. And that is one of the things that we're saying. We don't want to create this false hope that something is going to change overnight. Because one thing I've realized is that the distance between where you are to where you ought to be will be determined by how fast you're willing to change your paradigm. And if America doesn't change its paradigm about the value of a Black person and the value of the disenfranchised, the poor, the oppressed, they're not the systems that have been put in place. They're actually put to enforce and propagate this racism. So racism is not just individual, but it's also systemic. And because it's systemic, one of the things that I believe is that a lot of people, especially in the church, have been transformed individually, but they don't understand that because of the sin nature that exists in humanity, we've created systems that are broken. And the systems that are broken cannot meet our justice. So we have to go back and overhaul these systems, and it starts with the people within the system. There has to be a change of consciousness. What's happening is that we are trying to tell people change behavior, but the consciousnness that's creating the bad behavior is not changing. You cannot change outside behavior if you've not changed the inner attitude of the heart. You know, it's Sir William James that said that the greatest discovery of our time is that human beings, by changing the inner attitude of their heart, ultimately change the outer aspect of their life. So we can riot, we can go and protest, and that creates awareness. But true change has to begin on the dinner table before we can change institution, because some of the people that are actually passing these laws at the back of this thing, behind closed doors, they practice, they have racism. And I'm not saying everybody, but some people enforce it because that has been generationally transferred from one generation to another. And so until we begin to change the dialogue at the dinner table, we cannot be able to change the institution, because when the dialogue does not change, the mentality, we do not see things as they are, but we see them as we are. And so if we're not going to change how we see people and how we see humanity, and every life matters, when somebody is confronted by a decision like what Officer Chauvin had to do, he was confronted with a decision that required humanity. But you can tell the callousness and the lack of human care, civility, of understanding this person is entitled to their human right. And so that's where it has to start. We all have to start. It has to start in our homes. It has to start in the church. I want to say that the church has been missing in action. The dialogue has to be even in the church, in the pews, because part of the reason the church is segregated is divided in color, whether whites and blacks, is because of that very thing, the racism issue, when you date it back to when it started. So I think institutionally, before we can try to see institutional change, we have to have personal transformation. And that personal transformation is an inner heart transformation that leads to an outer work aspect. And so before we go talking about that change, I think it has to start inside. So, and I think that's why even when you look at Jesus, when he addresses the systemic issues and he addresses the Pharisees and the people of the law, he says, you hypocrites, you say you clean the cup on the outside, it looks good, but the inner core of your heart is dead. And until we heal what is dead within, see, the thing I like about this whole situation, there's a convergence happening. And this convergence is actually bringing an awareness of the actual brokenness of this nation. It brings the awareness of the actual fact that there's a lot of issues that needs to be addressed that we've covered up. But now God wants them addressed so that the institutions that we build are going to be institutions that will glorify God and will actually begin to take consideration of every human being.
Man, and you know what? Let me just say something that, Phineas, that's powerful. Let's ask this question here. One of the hard things that I see that goes on, and this might not be popular, we have to make sure that we don't categorize every white person as Officer Chauvin.
Yes.
See, I see a potential ditch, and let's address the issues for what they are. And I'm going to tie a lot of this issue is the media. The media has two extremes. Dr. Kanithi, I said, if you watch Fox News,
Right.
CNN,
Right.
you get 90% of the 10% that are at the far ends.
Yeah.
The other 80% can dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
The 10% can't. So speak to those issues.
Well, here's the thing: media is such a powerful thing because, like you've taught us, it's verbal engineering, and you can escalate or de-escalate things based upon how it's communicated. You know, and a lot of times is that the media is funded by people with agenda, and I think that is why it's a good opportunity for us. And I thank God for this Civility 360, and even like the talk you had with the Pan-African TV today. We have to begin to create our own platforms that begin to communicate the message that brings hope to humanity. We cannot continue to propagate and push the rhetoric, whether it's left wing or right wing. I think what matters is not what's right, or the right or the left. What matters is what is kingdom, what is right, what is at the core of what God wants to see happen. And so and in fact, one of the things I've been telling people, I'm not trying to take any side. I don't want to take side. I want to be on the side that stands for what God stands for.
Yes.
I want to be on the side that stands for humanity. I want to be on the side that actually fights for the humanity. And whether it's white, black, blue, I want to be on that side. Because at the end of the day, I believe that God follows his word to perform it. He's not going to follow our traditions. He's not going to follow our customs. He's going to follow what he has purposed to do. Many of the plans in a man's heart, but it's the purpose of God. So if we come alongside the purpose of God, if we align ourselves with his intent and purpose for humanity, then we will treat every person as a human being that matters in the eyes of God. So the systems that be, we have to begin to change them. And that's why I really thank God that we are creating our own platforms. We're beginning to tell our narrative. We're beginning to say, forget what's happening out there. Come here and we will give you solutions. And that's what we're doing here today. We're offering solutions. And I'm so proud of what we're doing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Dr. Kanita, this is what it's all about. Again, we can have these conversations, but the question that I've often told people is, what do we do when we leave here? That's why every one of these platforms have come with a form of solution, not just a solution for America, but a solution for the world. How can we come together and bring about true and positive change that will move us forward and not allow us to take 10 to 15 steps back? So creating platforms such as this that actually give a true narrative that show people that we are diligently working towards a goal that brings about hope, that brings about humanity, that brings about people who say something is happening. And the people will begin to get uneasy and have civil unrest because they don't see anything happening, or they only see the negative. It is time to actually not only verbally re-engineer, but by the sight to re-engineer the minds of our people to let them know you are valued, you are heard, you are seen, you are important, and we can do something. The key that I want everyone that is actually watching is this: we can all do better. Period.
That's
I don't care who you are. We can all do better. And that is something that I want everyone to know. We are in the process of providing solutions to the problem. And that is where change, true change, happens. That's where it happens. So share with us, Dr. Kanithia, if you could, give us one or two solutions to what you see going on in the world today with race and racism.
I think we have to get in each other's world. If I cannot see through your lens, I cannot have empathy or experience. I cannot have understanding of what your experience is. I think what I've seen is that whenever we get to these dialogues is that people become dismissive of racism. It doesn't happen, or slavery is gone, so get over it, or pick yourself up by the bootstraps. But when you make those simplistic, stereotypical responses, what it does, it negates the responsibility of what you need to do to begin to understand the core issue. And that's why those who want to make a difference today are the ones who are going to engage in the dialogue. It's not going to be comfortable. I'm telling you, it's not this. The reason this issue has not been dealt with for years and has been swept under the rug is the elephant in the room. It's the hot button issue that no one wants to talk about. It's because it's uncomfortable. It exposes failure. It exposes weaknesses. It exposes the wrong heart. But sometimes when you go to a doctor, you can have a wound, and unless you're willing to expose it and allow that thing to be dealt with, the doctor cannot prescribe. And so the reality is we need to get people, we need to have this conversation, even though it's uncomfortable, even though it's long overdue, we need to have the conversation. So one of the things I want to say is that we should first have conversation, and this conversation have to be honest and transparent. That's the most important thing. Number two thing, we have to enter into people's worlds. I think Dr. Sir Clyde Rivers has done an amazing job with talking about what history collides. We have to get in each other's world. There's a place Paul goes to a group of people called the Athens, and they worship different idols. They have different multiplicity of gods, and he gets into the world, and he says something. He says, I got into their world and began to experience life from their perspective so that I can win some. We know we're not going to win everybody in this thing. There are those who are on the extreme left. There are those who are on the extreme right. There are those who don't want to see any change happening because they feel like it will take from what they have. But there are those in the middle that Dr. Clyde is talking about, the 80% that really want to say, okay, so yes, there's a problem. How do we address the problem? I think those are the ones we need to start with, and we need to enter into each other's world. It's not enough to say I have a black friend. It's not enough to say I have a few white friends. You got to go into their life and experience the plight of what they've gone through. And then we have to, number three, so that's number two. Number three, we have to really begin to reveal these systems that propagate this kind of philosophy. Because if we don't deal with the systems, we are just going to create an old environment for the same behavior to continue. So we have to get to a point where we say, who are those in the legislature that needs to begin to enact laws and policies that begin to change and make these policies where it's a law now, and therefore there's an expectation. Because if you live up to humanity, the heart of man is desperately wicked. We are not going to do what is right. But when laws are enforced, then things are able to be enforced, and the policies are able to be enforced. So that's one thing. But I think at the core of this, even civility, I think part of the problem we have is the lack of civility in dialogue. We cannot it's okay to disagree with somebody. You can, just because I don't agree with your views does not mean I'm antithetical to who you are. We don't have to see each other as enemy. I always say that diversity is not adversity. And so we cannot see people just because they think different from us and feel like there's something wrong with them. No, they're just different. And the thing is, diversity is necessary for the ecosystem to exist. God intended for diversity to happen. So when we have black, white, Asian, Hispanic, all this adds to the totality of humanity. Because there's something, well, I know everybody loves tacos. And we love tacos, but we wouldn't have tacos had we not had. So there are things that, and I know I'm making light of a difficult situation, but there are things that we all, 7.8 billion people, we all have something to bring to the table. We all have value. The problem with racism is the dehumanization and the infringement of potential. The reason we have to fight against this, the reason we have to push so hard against this is that it infringes on human potential. It limits the capacity of human beings. When you have systems that limit education advancement, when you have people that cannot get full and total education because of where they live, because of the environment they've come from, then you've relegated a generation to poverty simply because they lack the tools it takes to survive in life. And not because they didn't want to, but because they were disadvantaged by a system that was structured to disadvantage it. So I think even those systems really have to be dealt with, and we have to expose the heart of these systems and begin to see what it is, because that's the only way we can begin to bring change in this issue of race.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well said, Dr. Kanithia. We already knew what we were doing when we assembled this panel.
Told you.
I hope that you all are picking up what's actually being put down. Come on, Sir Clyde Rivers.
Yes.
You know, we're going to make change.
Yes.
I know we are, because when you do it God's way,
yes,
he doesn't sleep on injustice.
That's right.
He doesn't go to sleep on injustice.
He does not.
He may give people time to get their heart right and change.
Yep.
But if they don't, eventually his thumb will go on it. And please hear this. We don't have the right to damage God's currency.
No.
That's people.
Yes, sir. That's right.
The issue is this. This is why I would fight for anyone that's unjust, because the word of God tells us to seek justice.
Justice.
Love mercy.
Yes.
And walk humbly before our God.
Yes.
When I stand in front of God, I want him to say, Dr. Clyde Rivers, you fought for all 7.8 billion people that I breathed life into.
Yes, sir.
And this is what we're doing. And I have so much hope, because now there's a young generation,
yes, sir,
that's not taking no for an answer. And I think it takes that dogmatic approach.
Right.
That we are going to see change.
Yes.
And I think the old generation has to guard against bringing their toxicity into a generation of young kids that are together, red, yellow, black, and white. They're all together.
Right.
So,
and Dr. Rivers, the thing about injustice, the scripture talks about that righteousness and justice are the foundation of God's throne. As much as God values righteousness and he wants us to teach righteousness, which is being right with them and being in right standing, he also wants to see that justice happens for all. And I was saying to somebody that we have to be careful, because one day injustice will meet God's justice. And we know how what that happens when that happens. But the reality of it is we have to get to a point where we care about injustice, because at the core of it, when we look at even just Jesus' life, when he was on earth, he cared about the disenfranchised. He cared about injustice. He cared about the poor. He wanted to set the captives free. He wanted to set liberty those who are oppressed. And what injustice does, it brings oppression to destiny. And so there are people whose destiny are not being realized because of injustice. And I think it's time that we don't remain silent, because silence is complicity. So as we are talking, we're saying, yes, we are not angry, we're not bitter, but we want to make sure that there's justice, because that's just like you say, Dr. Rivers, that's what is required of us, that justice, and there are two equal pillars that stand upon each other. So it's not that we can do one without the other. Right. And justice hinges on mercy. The issue here is, if we all got what we deserved, we won't be alive. But it's because of God's mercy that we are now consumed. So what we are saying is, let's have mercy, and let's ask God to give us empathy to realize that there are people who are being treated unfairly, and do something to change it. This is not about revenge. This is about humanity, treating everybody equally, the golden rule.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Kanithia. It is always a pleasure, my friend, to be in your presence, making big things happen all around the globe.
Thank you. Glad to be a part of you.
Yes,
Thank
yes,
you, baby.
yes. Man, we are definitely covering some ground, and I want to make sure that everyone is picking up what we're putting down. This is not something that we take lightly. This is an assignment from God, which we already know. So we're going to be diligent to do our best. Thank you again, Dr. Kenethia. Please
Thank you,
hold on
Doc.
in case we have some additional questions. Dr. Rivers, man, I am super excited. We started this panel off by talking some relevant and real truth. We talked about the Constitution and how initially we weren't even counted in that number. Let me just say this. The Constitution itself wasn't written with us in mind, but believe it or not, God didn't make any errors. So when we talk about in God we trust, when we talk about equality and justice for all, when we talk about those things, whether they who may have created it, our forefathers who had created it, may have wanted to exempt us, God had already included us. Our key is to get back to what God allowed them to see from the beginning. I know we're talking about reform. I know we're talking about changing laws and getting things together. But the ultimate law that I want everyone to understand is you cannot escape kingdom law. You cannot escape kingdom law. And I believe that right now, for such a time as this, God is raising people to speak, to act, and to bring about change that is going to rectify some of the things that we have experienced for years. And I don't want anyone that is listening to this to think that we're sweeping that under the rug, because we are seeking justice and we are going to operate in God's mercy and we are going to do all that we are to do. But it takes us setting up a standard. It takes us sitting at the table, not just to speak, but also to listen. Now, with that said, Sir Clyde Rivers, who are we bringing next to the stage?
Is like Jackie here yet?
Absolutely. She is here. She's in the waiting room. We're about to bring Jacqueline Edwards to the stage. Folks, I'm talking about a young lady who I haven't had the privilege yet to meet, but she is the president of the Association of Black Law Enforcers and also a community liaison to corrections in Canada. Jackie, it is so good to have you on with us tonight. How are you?
Oh, I am blessed. I am blessed. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Jackie.
Sir Rivers. Sir Rivers.
Good to have you in. My goodness, we're honored.
Listen, the honor is all mine. Praise be to God. Praise be to God. Dr. Anderson, I want to send greetings to her officially. Loved everything she brought to the table tonight. Everything. You guys honestly are doing God's work. When Dr. Sharon was talking about legislation and the importance of having the law, while I completely agree, I could not agree more with moving it from legislation to accountability. We have laws. We have the laws. We have the legislations. It is people's decision not to adhere, just like the laws that God Himself has given us. And we break those laws through sin every day. So if we will not listen to God Himself, how are we to expect man to listen to man? It is going back to the basics. It is going back to being civil. We are using the word civility because it is the one approach that has yet to be applied.
Wow.
It has not been applied across the border as it should be. It has not been given the opportunity to truly resolve the issues of hand, the cure. We are spending thousands of dollars to come up with vaccines, and we're spending millions of dollars to come up with medical ways of addressing things, and nobody hesitates. The other day that Terry Fox, we raised millions of dollars towards curing. If you ask people to contribute to a movement of civility, a movement that would actually address the issues at hand, how many people would really contribute? How many people would take the time instead to counter than to contribute? How many of us understand, as my brother who spoke before me said, the act of that officer who sat callously? He had his hand in his pocket. It was almost like, nothing happening here. Move along, move along. He is not the majority. He is not the majority. I can tell you that the majority of law enforcement practitioners are professionals, are abiding of the law, are there in fact to serve and protect. And so what we have to look at is that human being who was in that uniform that made the decisions that he made on that day to take somebody's life. Because if we stay lost in the system, instead of looking at the individuals within the system itself is not doing anything wrong. It's those who are within the system. It's those who are making the decisions on behalf of the system that we need to really have a conversation with and get an understanding as to why. Why did those other officers stand by and watch? What within me, what in me would ever stand by and watch something like that happen and not intervene? Why was it the individuals who were videotaping, and thank God they did, I'm not trying to be disrespectful of that, but why was it more important to capture it than it was for somebody's heart to be touched to the point where they're like, you know what, Lord, whatever it takes, I am going to step in and I'm going to do the right thing. I'm not going to stand by and allow a wrong to occur in front of me. And don't get me wrong, I don't believe it is as simple for everybody. But when God is in you, when you are motivated, when you are when you're coming and you're going, and your reason is to ensure that all you do is for the good of God, it can't be when it's easy to do it. It can't only be when it's convenient. So for me, civility is something that is continual. Civility for me is something that you apply it to everything and every aspect of who you are, every moment of who you are. It is non-negotiable. It is not by convenience. It is not dependent on if I am black, white, pink, or indifferent. Civility, in my humble opinion, means at the start and end of everything, I am first looking at you as God's child. We are children of God. We are children. And I think we have lost sight of why we are here and who we are here as a result of. It is, and my brother said it earlier as well. It is time not to just do better, but do the right thing. We We are now in 2020. We have zero excuses. We have the intelligence. We have the research. We have the data. We have
Wow.
all we need. What is lacking is a commitment to do what's right every day, every minute of every day. That is what I believe that is missing right now. And that is why this forum, and I'm so blessed to have been called into this. And I do feel that it is a calling. Dr. Rivers, after I spoke with you that night, I'm telling you, for me, it caused a shift for me in terms of being able to call it what it is. Let us not paint all police officers with that same brush. Let us not all paint that man, that officer, that individual who donned that uniform on that day, made a decision of the heart. He made a decision of the heart. In his heart lacked civility, lacked humanity, lacked what we need in order to change systematically, fundamentally. We've gotten so politically correct that we have taken God out of almost everything in life.
Wow.
We no longer we don't have religion in school. We don't. I'll share one thing with you. Of all the services, all the resources that we have in our penitentiary, you know the one that is used most often by the incarcerated men and women? Chaplaincy. Chaplaincy. You know why? It's safe. It is a place where they can go and feel humane. It is a place that they can go and not be judged in a way that life judges them. It is a place, and I say that to people all the time. People laugh often when incarcerated men and women say they found God. And people say, oh yeah, you went to jail and you found God. It's not that God didn't exist elsewhere. It's that when they got inside, their focus, they were able to actually, God actually was able to do what he has always wanted to do, but no longer did they have the tug of the evil one as much as when they were outside, if you know what I'm trying to say. So for me, it is. I think it was said earlier that it's not a light switch. We're not going to talk this issue away.
Yeah.
We have to collectively decide that every one of us are going to change our way. I can't change you, Dr. Rivers. Only the good God Almighty can do any kind of transformational change within you. And you have to accept, you have to discern his voice and say, I am going to listen to that voice instead of the other voice. But what we can collectively do is if more of us speak of civility, if more of us speak of the benefit of loving versus hating, if more of us make the decision, my brother spoke earlier about at the dinner table, how many of us still sit down and talk to our children about civility and humanity and the importance of simply loving one another? How many of us take the time as the grown-ups to talk to our children about those fundamental values that God, in fact, asks of? He doesn't ask much, eh? Think about it. He doesn't ask much of us. What he does ask of us is to love as I have first loved you. He's asked us to forgive so that I can forgive you. He's asked us to do simple things that don't cost a lot, but we tend not to want to discern his voice because the majority voice often doesn't belong to him.
This is real good information, Jacqueline, and I'm grateful and thankful to have you on the panel tonight. There are several questions that we want to get to, but I think you started off already in the right place. As we've all been saying, civility for all is what matters most. Without question, without hesitation, this is the platform in which we stand on and that we live in. Civility, not by deed only, not by word only, but in action. There are several things I want to bring up tonight and questions that we would like to ask. One here, I see Dr. Ruben West says law enforcement cost over $300 million in the fiscal year of 2019. Civility training would cost much less. Now, let me piggyback off of this statement here. One of the things that we are proposing as a solution is that we would have civility training, but a civility officer, if you would, a civility liaison within all levels of government that would be able to police in civility. I'm talking about a third party that has no bearing on the other, where no one is paying their paycheck, that's in the same department, and so on and so forth, so that we can have true civility and civility checks and balances when we have these issues. And I'm not just talking law enforcement, I'm talking education, I'm talking government, I'm talking everything. The same way that we had equal opportunity and these different things, we need a civility officer that can police injustice and incivility. Because we've all learned, and we can all say who are on the panel, whether you're in business or you're in corporate or you're an entrepreneur, at the end of the day, incivility costs us a whole lot.
Absolutely, it does.
So what are your thoughts, if you would? And is that something that you all have heard of before in the department or have even considered? Because we do have that as a solution. What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I'm happy to hear. It's something that I have heard, but not have had any major discussions about or been asked to provide any input on. It concerns me, Professor Burnett, that you have that as a tool and it is not being utilized as much as it should be. Perhaps if it was in fact implemented, then we wouldn't have half of the issues of concerns that we have right now. The challenge with tools and resources like that is that the decision makers often do not subscribe to those practices or those training. Because the thing is any training institute, if I'm a recruit or if I'm a police officer and my national training standard says I must do weapons training, I must do diversity training, whatever the training standards are, I can't say I'm not going to do it. So what would have to happen is that those decision makers who are looking at national training standards for police officers, educators, doctors, whomever, they're the ones that we would have to have this discussion on. It's not the police officer themselves that determine the training that police officers require, if you understand where I'm getting at.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Completely understand. Completely understand.
So it is the citizens, it's the law, the citizens of the country that would have to see the value in it and be the ones to push for it.
Very good. That
right?
makes sense.
So that it becomes a national training standard. And once that is, civility officers, I think, is a brilliant concept. And as I said, the concern is that you have that tool and in your own backyard, that's not being picked up. And more often than not, I find that it's because we need to position it with people who actually can enact it. We do a lot of talking to people who support us and who are aligned to us, but they have no authority to make the changes that we're trying to achieve.
Really good.
Agreed. And I would just say this, Jacqueline, personally, as a military veteran, I completely understand. I've been through all of the different trainings. I was a trainer at a lot of these different things, and I do understand how long it takes to institute these types of training. But I believe that for such a time as this, every one of us who are on the line, everything that we are actually talking about and have been groomed for up until this time is ripe for the picking. So we will get to the right location. We will get to the right office, and we will talk about these things to actually get them implemented. Change happens when people are ready for change, and the people are ready for change.
Professor Burnett, we've been ready. We've been ready. We are at a state of readiness like no other. We are at a pivotal point in our earthly walk right now as a nation. We're at a pivotal point. And the other part that needs to happen is that we, with the understanding of civility and the importance and folks like us that understand the worth and the value and the importance of God focused and driven ways of life needs to be at those decision making tables. We need to, when we're looking at different careers, because we as a committee, as a community, can put forth these ideas, but we need that those ideas go to people who are in positions of authority to sign it off. And so that's another angle that why, as you know, even as I credit, I applaud you for your service and thank you for that. And I say the same of me, that I became a law enforcement officer because I wanted to be part of the solution. I wanted to be inside the jails with the individuals and treat them the way they need to be treated. So we need to continue to encourage people with mindsets like my co-panelists tonight, with mindsets like you guys, to go into the professions where we can make a difference.
Jackie, I have a question. I want to bring a team of our civility leaders to Canada and actually sit with you and get wisdom on how to package. Can we do that?
Come on.
We're good. Okay.
Come on.
And you guys heard it. We're going to be going to Canada when everything opens up because you know, I understand we need to get wisdom from you as well, because having one media narratives don't give us reality. So we need to, as I said with you, the president of the Association of Black Law Enforcers, we need to sit with you. And I'm going to bring some people in because I would love to see how we can start to work civility with your institution.
Well, I would also want to let you know that, you know, my colleagues with the National Black Police Association US, my colleagues with the National Black Police Association United Kingdom, I would love for maybe the 4 of us to sit down and have a conversation, because This is going to take a united effort.
Right.
And this is going to take all of us to agree that this is, God is so good. When I am sitting here tonight, and I am filled with his grace and his mercy, and I am filled with his love. And he is saying to us that all of this will actually materialize. He is saying to us that to be still and know that he is here. He is not just near, he is here. This, what we are doing, is not by our design. This is God's way of bringing us to a place where his will continue to be done. And I know I speak very philosophically, and a lot of people might think, it is fluff, but there's nothing fluff about our God. He is intentional.
Come on.
And all that is happening right now, it is not us, it is him. And when we realize and give the glory to whom it truly belongs to, we will see success in areas that we thought impossible. Desmond Tutu, and I have a quote I wanted to share earlier, and it says, if you stay neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. And Archbishop Tutu said that, and said it so eloquently. So when people say, I'm not going to get involved, or you think we should do that, or maybe we should just, you have already chosen the side of the oppressor when you say that you're not going to call out what is wrong. So Professor Burnett, Dr. Rivers, I am so thankful to be a part of this. This is going to bring a completely different lens to what it is that we have already been doing. I welcome the conversation. I welcome the opportunity for us to continue to engage. Perfect. And I would like to bring my colleagues from the UK and the US in on the conversation, because I think the more of us that are at the table, the more opportunity we have to achieve results.
Impacting change truly is what it's all about, and as we've all stated, now is the time. Now is the time. As we begin to assemble these panels, our whole purpose was to show people civility in action. So let me ask you this, Jacqueline, if I could. How do we educate the public on the de-escalation process? And if I can make that a part two, what should every parent teach their children about dealing with law enforcement?
That law enforcers don't get to not abide by the law. They need to understand that we are not outside of the law. So they need to understand that we have a role to play, we have a responsibility, we have a duty, but children need not treat us or expect that we should be treated any differently than another human being. I think there is this sense of eliteness and this sense of bigger than life that often is equated to police officers or officers in general, that it's almost like when I was younger, you looked up to police officers, you looked up to firefighters, you looked up because they are to uphold the laws. So what I try to tell my children is let's rehumanize. Don't dehumanize the police. Don't make them into something larger than life, and let these kids be afraid of them. Be mindful of the behavior between right and wrong. Teach your children right and wrong. And I don't know that I'm speaking specifically to your question, Professor Burnett, because the question for me is, what should we be teaching our children about the police differently than we've been teaching them? What have we been teaching them then?
Let's look at it from this perspective. And I asked that question on purpose because I do understand in the world today, what one family may have to teach their kid about law enforcement, it's totally different from what another family has to. So I asked it first from the perspective of how do we educate the public on the de-escalation process? Because I believe that most people do not know. In the military, we had rules of engagement. We had use of force. We knew exactly how we were supposed to respond in garrison and at war. We knew that there would be a firing shot first. We knew we would shout out. We knew we would do all of these things. But I'm not sure that the public truly does understand the de-escalation process when it comes to law enforcement. Let me give you an example. In the military, I would shout, I would shock, I would show, I would shove, and then if I had to, I'd shoot a warning shot, and then lastly, it would be shoot to decapacitate or deadly force, right? But do we as a society know what the de-escalation process is for law enforcement? We would have to teach our children, keep your hands 10 and 2. Make sure your license registration is right above you, not reaching over to your glove compartment. We would have to tell our children, make sure you say, yes, sir, no, ma'am, this, that, and the other, or whatever the case. Now, here is what's so interesting to me is that this is common decency already, right? That's what it is. But when we look at, I didn't want to go there, but let me say it this way. When we look at one race being treated for killing 3-4 people and running around naked, and the police actually taking the time to really subdue this person, but then we look at one other person who's standing with nothing, they didn't hurt anyone, and they end up dead. There's a process here that we're not getting to. One, when you talk to the police, you should talk to them in a calm manner. 2, always give them what they're asking for. 3, you see what I'm saying? Like,
Professor Burnett, that's always been the rules of engagement. We've known the rules of engagement. What's gone wrong is that even when you engage using the rules, you do not get treated
right.
You ought to.
That's it.
The humanity factor. That's what we're trying to get to.
That's exactly it.
And I know you alluded to it earlier, but I wanted to bring it back up for those who will be watching the replay to get it, to understand. For the person who will watch the video and say, oh, well, he was mouthing off and all this and making all the excuses. If I comply and I do all that I'm supposed to do, can I not live?
Well, that's the question. And if I do not live, God forbid, the action that needs to be taken is not re-educating the community in terms of the rules of engagement, but ensuring that those who do not uphold the law is held accountable for not operating within the rules of engagement.
Got it.
I love it, and we got it.
Yeah.
And here's the deal. Sometimes you have to ask so that you can hear, right?
Amen.
And sometimes you have to ask so other people can actually hear.
Yeah, very good.
Here's the last question that I will ask you, Jacqueline, and this is so important. I'm talking about this is coming out of the mouth of youth. How do we get rid of bad cops, and why is it so hard?
You know what? If I had that, the reason it is hard is because we tend to spend more defending the wrong than investing in the right. Okay? That I'm just going to say that, Professor Burnett.
Absolutely, we understand.
You know, I think it boils down to that. We spend more defending the wrong than investing in the right. And that is why it is difficult for us to remove behavior that is contrary to the oath that we took. No oath I took said that I would act the way that some of people in my professions are acting.
Ooh, listen.
And what my recommendation would be is when I took that oath and you gave me that badge, you did so under a contractual agreement. And you were in the military. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah. You signed a contract. And when you violate that or break that contract, I should then be able to take back.
That's it.
What it is I gave you in order to fulfill the contract.
That's it.
Miss Jacqueline, let me say this. For weeks now, we have been saying the exact same thing. And I cannot wait for us to sit down so that we as civility personnel can find out how do we actually erect what we are saying. Amen. Let me read this into the hearing of those who are listening tonight. As a law enforcement officer, under the Law Enforcement Code of Ethics, it says, as a law enforcement officer, my fundamental duty is to serve mankind, to safeguard lives and property, and protect the innocent against deception, the weak against oppression or intimidation, and the peaceful against violence or disorder, and to respect the constitutional rights of all people to liberty, to equality, and to justice. That's that oath, right?
That's so that when oath. I don't adhere to that, I have broken the contract.
Yes.
And I don't want to put you on the spot here. One of the things that I am researching now to find out as we go to all chiefs of police and all the different panels, what we are trying to figure out is, how do we get to the Officer's Bill of Rights, which is one of the things that kind of gives us a blockade on when and how we can fire people who are not performing to standard? Because even in the military, we had to have counseling forums. We had to have documentation of the wrongs and what we were doing to correct those wrongs in their mentality. We love the police. Let me share this with all who are listening today. Yep. We love our law enforcement. Those who are upholding the badge and doing the oath, we love you. We don't want to make no mistake about that. But we're trying to figure out, how do we get rid of the bad apples? How do we cause the cohesive unit to say, hey, that's incorrect and that needs to change? That's the part I believe that not only America, but the world is really looking for. That's it. That's where we all are right now.
Wow.
We're all on the same team, looking to do the same thing, and that's to make humanity and civility above all else.
Exactly.
That's where we all want to be. And we are going to get to that place by doing it together, working together, side by side, getting an understanding, and bringing about change and reform that actually gets us to that place of humanity and civility.
Amen.
So I just want to say thank you.
And Jackie, thank you for the candor. Thank you for the honest conversation. This is what we need to move forward, and we appreciate you so much. And I will be bringing a team of people up to Canada to meet so we can see how to move forward and make the world a better place. And thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
Absolutely. And again, let me say this, Jacqueline, if there is anything that we as a team can do for you, if there is research, if there is anything that we can do to help you, that's what you have. You have it on recording. You have it to the world. That's what we are saying to you. So thank you. for being on the panel tonight.
My pleasure. God bless you all. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
My, folks, I'm telling
Man,
you,
that was
it only
fantastic.
gets better. This is fantastic.
Wow.
Jacqueline, we are super excited to be able to
Thank
come
you.
and sit alongside you and your counterparts to find solutions that we can actually implement. I have the utmost respect for our law enforcement and appreciate all that you all do. Sir Clyde Rivers, talk to me. How are you feeling?
Matt, this is fantastic. I really appreciate the candor of the conversation, because I mean, that was true conversation.
Absolutely.
And that's how we're going to get things done. And it's just, I appreciate this show. From hostility to civility, I believe we're on the right path.
Without question. Without question. Well, listen, I am super excited. Who are we bringing up next to the stage? I know we have at least two more powerhouses that are going to bring some real perspective. Talk to me, sir.
We got Dr. Rebecca Harper,
Woo-hoo!
one of the brilliant minds of the world. Her initiative, Family Civility. She's an author. She's my friend, Dr. Rebecca Harper.
All right. Dr. Rebecca Harper, welcome to the stage. How are you doing today?
I am just in awe and blessed to be part of this discussion. Having a friend like Jackie and being part of that association is, I just was amazed. I mean, Dr. Anderson, just everybody coming to the table and having this discussion and being candid about it and being real about it is just amazing. I come from a country, originally I'm from Jamaica, and today I was looking at our history, and that our little island, and this is talking about fighting oppression, because to me, civility is here to fight oppression, and this is the root cause. And I can define oppression for you, because oppression is the exercising power to marginalize, silence, and subordinate specific social groups. And the sad part about oppression is that it cannot happen without acceptance. And what is happening is the world is changing and saying, no more. I'm not accepting oppression anymore. And I go to my little country of Jamaica, my little island of 4.2 million people, and I go back into history. And Jamaica was the first country in the entire world to put a trade embargo against South Africa against apartheid. Our little country rallied the musicians of our little country, including the great Bob Marley, sang songs and spoke against apartheid in South Africa. A little country stood up and did not accept the oppression. Now, I'm not saying we have our problems. And I go back even further to history, because many talk about how, slavery was, the fight against slavery, but look at the Maroons of Jamaica, right? Nani walked, the great heroine, our only heroine of Jamaica, walked from one end of the island, east of the island, to St. Elizabeth to warn her brother Kudjo about the British, and they beat the British. You see, I learned history not from a white person. I was in high school and I would sit in a history class and I would learn, because our history books were written by our fellow Caribbean people, our Jamaicans who were Black. Because history is mainly written by the victors. And so I see a lot of white people in shock now and saying, oh my gosh, I did not see this, I'm not racist. I was taught this when I was 15 years old, 13 years old, 14 years old. I remember sitting in a classroom And every time I put up my hand in math class, I was ignored because I shouldn't be in that school, because we have a process where we take an exam and we go into a public high school, and it was a traditional high school, and I worked very hard, and there's no name, no age, there's no name and no color on your paper. So you're basically, I went to a traditional prep school, I took my exam, and I got into a traditional high school. And a woman, and I couldn't understand why she ignored me. And she said, well, you can afford to go to a private school. Why are you here taking the place of a child who can't afford it? And she literally ignored me, and there was nothing I could do about it. So, and I'm not saying, I know it's unique, and I bless God for my experiences, but oppression is oppression. And it's about time we speak up against it. And civility is the cure for oppression.
It's really good. Go ahead, Dr. V.
Wow. Let me ask you a question as we think through all of this. What do you believe we can do to move from hostility to civility?
By not being hostile. I am going to quote Nelson Mandela. I mean, a man that I idolize. He says education is the most powerful weapon to change the world. And we are doing exactly that tonight. We're educating. We are speaking. The technology of this world is allowing our voices to be heard that we have never been heard before. And this is where we have to move forward. And we cannot be hostile. We have to be civil. And, you know, you hear Dr. Anderson with her curriculum. And I have a curriculum that I go into the homes, door to door, and I teach civility. Because civility starts from the house. Because guess what? Oppression is in the home. You know, I grew up in a very traditional culture where I was told as a woman, the neck turns the head. So therefore I have no voice. And I have the head of the family, and the male is the head, and I have to do what he has done. I live in a culture that the law still states a husband cannot rape his wife. And these are all laws that need to change. So it's not about the weapons. It's not about revenge. It's about saying, okay, we need to sit at this table. Everybody needs to sit at this table. And the loudest voice cannot be the only voice heard. We have to be civil by listening to everybody's voice. And stop accepting oppression.
All right, Sir Clyde Rivers.
Yeah. I have a question for you. What do you do when you're not protected, and then people tell you how to sit at the table? See, this is something that when you do what people tell you, you say, great, we're not protected. A murder happens, and everyone says, calm down, protest this way.
No.
Again,
That's oppression again.
Yeah, again, I'm anti-looting, I'm anti-violence.
But it's oppression again. It's oppression again.
Huh?
It's oppression again. Because I am telling you how to react. Now,
right.
If it happened to me, and this is the problem, and I say it, and I accept the color of my skin. I have to admit, one thing that I have learned through this whole thing is just because I don't see color, the problem I had to accept is I didn't see racism either. I moved to a country, I live in Canada, and I became automatically unemployable. What was interesting was I would sit in front of white employment officers and they would say, well, you need to network. And I'm like, huh? And I was like, okay, I guess I need to get out. I did not see what they were saying to me. I have a resume where all my experience is in Jamaica. So on paper, I'm Black. And they were trying to say to me, until one person who I know said to me, well, you need to walk in there and show them. I said, you know what? And that's when it hit me. All of it happened. It hit me and I went, oh. And you know what I said to the person? And this is where I am blessed to have the friends I have, and I'm blessed, and I have eliminated a lot of other people in my life, because if they don't want to hear the white privilege is a real thing, I don't want to speak to them. If I can, every discussion I have, I bring it up to my children, and this is where children come in. As a white person, I have to teach my children that they have a privilege. Now, I say no to that privilege. I say it's wrong, because what I said to that person was, you know what? If I have to walk in there and they give me a job because I'm white, I don't want that job. And that's what I have to do, and that's what other white people have to do. We have to give up that privilege. And this is the thing. This is why it's a fight. This is why the oppression is still happening, because nobody wants to give up their privilege. Nobody wants equality. I mean, look what happened when Cuba went communist. Look at socialism. Capitalism reigns the day. And that is the height of privilege. And now what has happened with privilege, it's now multicultural and multicultural, but they don't want to give it up. So they make it the white. They don't want to say it's rich against poor, because that's what it is.
Interesting, very interesting. So I know that there are going to be people who have many, many different views on this. And some that may be watching the replay will have all of their little rhetoric that they will want to say. See, what I want to help people to understand is this. If you look at me and automatically, push me off to the side or try to put me in a box, then it's your loss. You have to listen and learn. We have to get back to the art of listening so that we can understand, instead of thinking what we know as if that is already true. With that statement, Dr. Rebecca, what I want to ask you is, what is the importance of listening for action?
Oh, listening is the key, because then listening is actually the action against anti-oppression. And I said it today. Look at charities and NGOs. They're just as oppressive. They walk into a community. They tell that community what to do. They're walking in like the savior.
Yep.
And I was like, no. I'm going to give you an example. Somebody said, oh, when you give a man a fish, they eat for a day. And this is a Bible quote. But when you teach a man to fish, he eats for a lifetime. Well, suppose a man don't want to fish at all. Suppose he likes chicken. Ask the man, do you want to eat chicken? Let me help you do what you need to do. And that is the core of the family civility curriculum. The first class I teach in that curriculum is anti-oppression and civility.
Very good.
And the second class I teach is active listening.
Very good.
Because that's what we need to do, is listen to what the people want and help them achieve what they want to achieve. And advocate against oppression, advocate against struggle. They'll say, you'll walk into a home and they'll say, a woman will say, boy, you know, and I've had this happen. I've worked and the woman will say, well, why am I going to do this? Because all that's going to happen is the man is going to take all the money from me and go to the bar. Why am I going to work?
Very good.
See, one of the things I understand, even as we continue to do these forums, is a mind is a terrible thing to waste. And oftentimes we get so caught up in historical things or book knowledge, don't actually take time to implement and act on things. Active listening and understanding why we're listening for importance and having these dialogues, many people would see this as a waste of time. But I have to really, really be honest. Change only comes when you're ready to make change happen, not just in word, but also in deed. I often tell people that your audio must match your video. That means that you've got to stand up and set up a standard that if nobody ever knew you, they would know the work that you've done. And that's what we've assembled on this panel. That's what we brought to the table. That's why this is important. There are those who will go out and march. There are those who will go out and protest. But there are also those who will get at the right table and institute real change.
Yes.
And you need all of them. You need the marchers, you need the protesters, and you need the people at the table. You need all of them.
Yes, yes. We need a 360-degree angle. That's what Civility 360 is all about.
Yeah.
We know that there are going to be some that need to be here, here, and there. But all together is when we actually make it move. That's what I believe. Why? Because together we are all better. That's why we're talking about civility for all. We're moving from that hostile mindset to figuring out how can we really all get along? How can we bring our best to the table so that we can actually have forward progress? I love seeing those who don't agree with me. That's okay. You don't have to agree with me for us to be friends or for us to impact the world. But what we do have to do is bring our best to the table.
I'm going to bring it back to family civility. I'm going to bring it back to family.
Absolutely.
And exactly what you're saying. And Dr. Rivers preaches it on the different histories. We have this discussion already, so he knows what I'm going to say. I say it in a different language. I say perspective. You will have an older sibling and a younger sibling experience the same exact day in their life with their parents. And when 20 years later, you will have completely different memories of the same incident. It's completely. And we can choose to argue and say, no, you're wrong. You're making up history. You live fiction, and be vicious about it. Or you can say, you know what? You're perfectly right, because you are older than me. Therefore, your awareness would have been more than me. And therefore, your memory will have a different perspective than I would.
That's good.
It is.
And that is where that is what civility is listening to the other person, accepting that their truth is their truth.
Come on now. Wow. You're walking heavy. You're walking heavy.
And this is it. Everybody has their truth. I admit, I've been to a police officer in Jamaica and I fret because I'm like, oh my gosh, what is he going to do to me? And then I learned my rights, right? But then a poor man going in front of the police officer, he'll beat him first. He won't beat me. And I have to, when that man comes to me and say police officers are awful and this and that, I have to accept their truth and turn to them and say, what happened? How can we make it better together? And we have to accept that your truth is your truth. Your memory is valid. Your hurt, Dr. Anderson mentioned it earlier, and I have and training in trauma-informed practice is a huge thing. because the danger of trauma is you don't know you have it.
Right.
That is the danger, and you get triggered. As I will give I had PTSD when I first came up to Canada, and a tone in a voice, and let's bring it back to family. You will go through a hard divorce. You know, the colonial model has created abuse in the home. Financial abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse is the last. You go through the emotional, you go through the mental, you go through the verbal, you go through the financial, you go through the controlling and the isolation way before the partner hits you. Some of them, sometimes you don't even reach the hitting stage. And I had a judge say that to me, oh, well, he never hit you, so what you talking about? Right? But going back to the trauma, I didn't know I had it. But I was triggered, and then I would react. Now, Dr. Vernon, you know this. How do you react to trauma? 3 things. Flight, fight, or freeze.
Yeah.
I froze. And sometimes I run. I've had to learn not to do that. But I've never been the one to fight. There are some people who fight. In the youth justice system, when you look at it, most of the youth have been traumatized from childhood. And they go to fight mode every time they're triggered. We have to accept their truth and why they react. When I'm parenting my children, I don't discipline their action. I say, why are you? We dig deeper. I say to my parent, dig deeper. Why is your child behaving that way? Find out why.
Phenomenal. I love it. I love it. At the end of the day, you have to get to the root of the matter. You have to find out the why behind the action.
Racism is a symptom of a core problem.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's right.
Wow.
Racism is a symptom of and we are putting band-aids on racism, and we're not fixing the core problem, which is oppression.
That's good. That's good.
That's good. Core problem.
Wow.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Sir Clyde, what do you have, sir?
Dr. Harper, thank you for your insight always. You're always a blessing to have on Civility 360.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. Thank you so much.
And I'm honored to have joined the discussion and be part of the truth.
Thank you.
Yes, and more. Yes, I love it, love it, love it. Thank you so much, Dr. Rebecca, for being on, for being a part. Hold tight. We are going to maybe have some questions at the end and bring everyone back in. We have next up the one, the only. Who do we have? Dr. Linda Laura. Oh my God. Oh my God. It's about to get fire up in here because, hey, let me call the firehouse right now. Okay. All right, guys, get ready. We have Dr. Linda Laura that is going to be joining us to the stage. Dr. Linda, how you doing?
Come on, I'm on fire now. Come on, with all this good stuff going on, come on. If we haven't changed the world already, something's wrong. Come on.
All right.
Wow. That's all I can say. Thank you.
Yes.
Wow.
It is a blessing to have you on our panel tonight. I know you have so much insight, so much wisdom, especially in this arena. You know, I know you are bringing civility to the inner streets, and I'm super excited because as we kind of mentioned, to get into your program, students literally have to have at least 4 Fs. And that right there in itself is phenomenal because most of the time those students are counted out. They're thrown out. They're not believed to have any worth or value. I want you to talk a little bit before we dive into the rest about that program and how you're changing lives and mentality.
Amazing.
Let me tell you something. With racism comes discrimination. Okay, you can't separate them. So when you see racism, you see discrimination. Okay, and we all know what discrimination is. It is not giving certain people the same opportunity that you give others. Okay, So that is what the name of our program is the Firehouse. And that is what it's based upon. Okay. Opportunity, not giving everyone the same opportunity simply because of their grade level. Okay. You have all A's. There's plenty of opportunity for you. There's plenty of programs for you. Okay. These are the people or the students that are seeked out because of their academic report card. Okay. It has nothing to do with anything else. Who they are, where they're raised, where they come from. It's simply because they have achieved a high academic score. Okay. Which leaves out everyone else that does not have the same score. Okay. And so that is why we said, wait a minute. Why are they being discriminated against? Why aren't they been given the same opportunity simply because of their GPAs and their grade levels? Okay. So we created a program called the Firehouse where you have to have 4 Fs or more. Why 4? I love to say that we have overachievers. Some come with all Fs. They want to make sure they get into this program. Okay. And so why is it that they are getting these grades? What is the problem? You see, most time the educators think is they're lazy, they don't care, whatever. They have a whatever attitude, I'm here, they're slouching, not getting to the root of the problem. Okay.
Come on now.
Now, the ones with the grade high levels, okay, they get up, most of them, and have breakfast. Okay. These kids come to school, nobody is feeding them before they come. Okay. Okay. They have no, honey, wake up, it's time to go to school. Why? Because a lot of their parents have already gone to work. They're in prison. They're absent from the house. They have nobody to wake them up. When they wake up is when they get to school. But now they're tardy, so now they're in trouble for being tardy. See, nobody's doing the background check. Why are they not paying attention? Hungry. Have you ever been hungry? And had no attention except, when is this thing over so I can get something to eat, right? So you expect them to sit there 6 and 8 hours on an empty stomach and learn and hear and receive what somebody's throwing out at them when their stomach is growling, when they're hungry, knowing that even when they go home, their refrigerator's empty. But we're basing them on their academic grade, which is eliminating them from opportunity.
Wow.
Okay. So we have we're great friends with the president of Valley Christian School. We're here in the Silicon Valley. Valley Christian School is a prestigious high school. It's known as the high school that would be equivalent to the Harvard, to the Princeton, to the Stanford universities. Okay, we're in Silicon Valley, which means we have Apple. Okay, we have Google, we have Facebook, we have every company, technology company that we are using on a daily basis. They send their kids there to that school. Okay, why? They have the money to send their kids. It's a private institution. Okay, it's like sending your kid to Harvard or Princeton or some Stanford, some high quality school. Okay, so only the kids with the parents that have this kind of money can send their kids there. Okay, so they decided that they were going to have the ISS program, which is an International Space Station program. And when you are in this program and you have successfully, in which this is what they do, they have them create a model or some kind of
spaceship.
Something that's launched to space. Mm-hmm. And if you launch anything into space, you are now qualified as a bona fide space scientist.
Wow.
Okay. So these kids that go to Valley, their parents have money. Okay. These are the things that these kids are having the opportunity to do. Well, the president wanted to know if it was money and prestige that qualified these kids to be rocket scientists. So to find out, he said, I am going to give this opportunity to kids that their parents don't have money. They don't have prestige. So who do they come to? The firehouse. Why? Because we have all the F students, all the nobodies, all the dummies, all the ones that are never going to make it. They're never going to amount to anything, right? This is what they're told on a daily basis, right? Because of their grades, not because of their intellect, because of their grades. This is why they're in this category of never amounting to anything, never going to make it, never going to be successful. Okay. Gave them the same opportunity that these kids, where the parents have money and prestige. You know, the firehouse kids superseded them.
Wow.
Dr.
Wow.
You came to their graduation.
Yep.
Listen,
Yep.
We are funded by the city of San Jose for 40 kids. You know how many kids we have in our program? 180. 180. You know why? Because we're not going to tell number 41, we're not funded for you. We can't help you. No, we are going to help them. And you know how we help them? By letting them know they are somebody. They can make it. They are valued. They can be successful. This may be the situation right now, but don't let your environment, don't let your home situation determine who you are and who you're going to be. Let me tell you, 0.0. Remember, 4 Fs or more, your GPA is nothing. 3.5, 3.8, 4.0. Come on. Going now to the Stanfords, to the
Yes.
Come on, with high GPAs getting a chance. Why? Opportunity. 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 That is the key. What opportunity are we giving to those who we think just because they don't have money, they don't have prestige, that they're never going to make it? See, that is discrimination in its fullest.
Wow. Listen, let me start off by saying Dr. Linda Laura and the Firehouse is doing a phenomenal job out there in California. And what we're trying to do is bring this mentality, bring this institution, bring this system across the globe. Why? Because it's needed. There are people who, if they simply had the opportunity, they could rise, they could achieve. But it takes someone with a skill eye and a heart to help them see. 1 minute, give them to me. Let me talk with them. Let me sit with them. Let me show them who they are. And that brings me to this question right here. And I believe that you are the best person to answer this question, Dr. Linda.
My God.
How do we deal with prejudgment in society?
Well, it's so simple. God created humankind. He could have called us anything, but he called us humankind. Why? So that we could bring human kindness. Human kindness. Humankind was created for human kindness. So we have to look past everything else that we believe to be true and get to the root. Get to the root of why somebody is acting the way they are acting. See, in the education system, these kids are acting that way because they think they're tough. They think they're hard. They think they're cool. You know, I've held the hardest gang member in my arms, weeping and crying literally like a baby because his mom did not come home at night. For 10 years, he would sleep by the door so his mom would not leave. And his mom would literally jump out the window so she wouldn't have to go over her son who was leaving. Let me tell you, these are the kind of kids that are hard, that are tough, that are cool, that are tatted down from the face up. It's beyond that. We don't look at the outside. we see the heart.
Mm.
We see who they are really crying out to. They're crying out for a family. They're crying, and that's what a gang is all really is. It's a family. It's a family of people that come together as of a real family, that they support each other. See, that's why they join these gangs. They join them simply because they have no family at home. So now they feel a part of something. And so that is why they're hostile. Okay. You know, I'm Hispanic, and I'm Mexican. You know, I do not speak Spanish. And let me tell you why. Because when we were growing up, if you spoke Spanish at school, you were in trouble. So instead of learning Spanish at home like we're supposed to, and then go to school and learn English, our parents had to teach us English so that when we got to school, we wouldn't speak Spanish and get in trouble.
Mm.
So now look at, my kids don't speak Spanish. My grandkids ruined a whole generation of a culture that is Spanish speaking, simply because we weren't allowed to speak Spanish at school. So now we don't speak this. You know how many more kids we could help right now if we could speak Spanish, but we don't? You know, so another thing is too is, you know, culture against culture, ethic against ethic, right? We see nothing wrong with it when, you know, two Hispanic people are talking to each other and put, you know, saying derogatory things, you know, this. We say, oh, well, why is that allowed? Why is that? What, you know, they're both. So then we get the Sureños and the Norteños, okay? Now we have two gang rivals of the same race, the same culture, but now they're rivalry, right? Why? It's because we think it's okay because of they're not discriminating, they're not racism, because they're both of the same race. So that right there is another problem that we have, thinking that it's okay just because we're the same race to put each other down. Okay? It's not okay. It's not okay across the board.
That's right.
And so this is also another thing that civility does. When we begin to understand that when we are consistent and intentionally and purposely living civility out with each other, rather we're the same race or rather we're different races, we will begin to see something breaking. I believe it has to break in within our own cultures. See, we're telling other cultures, don't say this to them because it's racist. Don't say that to them because it's racist. But when we say it within ourselves, now we don't say anything. Now it's okay. Now, you know, well, you know, we're both Mexicans, you know, if you call each other a wetback, well, you know, he was a wetback too. Really? So we begin to degrade ourselves, and we begin to break us down so that when somebody else says it to us who's not in our culture, now we're offended. Now it's a race thing. It wasn't a race thing when we were talking to each other that way.
Come on, Dr. Laura.
It's really powerful.
That is extremely important, because we have to decide if it's not right for one, then it shouldn't be right for all.
That's so good.
Let's not play pity pat, folks. This is not a yo-yo. We need to decide what is right. So that brings me to another question, and I'd like for you to tie your solutions in. I know you have many, but let me ask you this: how can we bring unity back to our communities?
Okay, we have to live the solution. Okay, we can't say one thing and do another. Okay, if we have the solution, we have to demonstrate the solution. Okay, I was sharing this with Dr. Rivers. I was in the store in line with somebody, and I was on the phone talking to my granddaughter and pushing my cart. Well, all of a sudden, this lady turns around at me and says, 6 feet distancing. Okay, really rude. Okay, and just the way she said it, right, stopped me. I said, excuse me? She said, it's 6 feet, all crazy. I said, excuse me, ma'am. be nice. I don't mind, being 6 foot, but be nice. Be nice. We're going to be in line together. Everywhere we go now, we're in line. We're in line to get in. We're in line to get out, right? We're in line. So if we're going to be in line with each other, we better know how to treat each other. So I had to, because believe me, Jesus, okay? But I had to remember, I'm the solution. I'm the solution. So how I reacted and how I responded was going to prove to her that I'm the solution. And the solution is, let's be nice to each other in line. We're going to be in line. We're going to be in line at every store now. Yeah. How are we going to handle being in line with different people, different cultures? So I said, be nice. We have to learn to be nice if we are going to make a difference. So that started with me. Okay? I had to consistently, intentionally, and purposely live what I believe to be true, and that is civility. So when it starts with us, then our children can catch on, our grandkids, and everybody can catch on, because we are the solution. I love what Dr. Rivers says. I have a solution, and that solution is me.
That's right. That's right.
Solution.
Amen.
And, as we talk about that, being the solution, you are the solution. What that actually means is we are to embody civility in real time.
Yes.
We are to be the walking, talking, living, breathing civility, if that's what we truly believe. See, I remember back in the day when we used to tell you talk is cheap, right?
Yeah.
When people used to tell you, I'm from Missouri, you got to show me, right?
Come on, B.
That's what we're talking about. We have to be the embodiment of civility.
Yes.
I can tell you right now, as we utilize these social platforms, I call them trolls. You're going to have people on your chat talking mess, this, that. You don't pay them no attention. Why? Because you've got to walk in civility. You've got to exude love out of you. Even when someone mistreats you, you've got to embody civility all the time.
That's right. I tell people we're either a duck or we're a quack.
Come on now.
When a duck gets out of water, it runs right off.
There it is. There it is.
It's all talk.
All talk.
So we're either going to be we're going to be able to live it, right? We're going to be the example of it.
Yeah.
When they say civility, they're going to say, "Oh, that's Dr. Rivers." When they hear civility, oh, right? That's so and so. Anybody who says they are a part of civility, that's who they're going to remember. They're not going to remember, oh, it's intentionally, purposely, saying the. They're not going to remember all that, right? They are going to say, oh, civility, and our faces is what should pop up when they're saying civility. Why? Because we're not acting civility, we're living civility. We are civility. It's not something we put on and we put off depending on what kind of mood we are in or the situation that arises. We are civility.
Yeah.
And when
and if you don't mind me interjecting something, and the color of our skin is not what they expect to bring civility. That's a reality, and that's a truth.
That's it.
So when actually people see us being civil, it's a whole game-changing narrative for culture and race to understand that, hey, minorities have civility. And here it is, people. We love everyone. We do. We treat 7.8 billion people the same. You would be shocked at the time people say, you are a civility leader? And I said, why not?
Thank you.
Hey, look, man, I'm the big baptizzle. That's what, yeah.
That's it.
Absolutely. We will say that.
And in our culture,
Mhm.
depending on what side of town you lived on, you know what? That told you who you were. So
Mhm.
east side for us was the bad side, the cool side. You know, the other day, we were on the east side, right? And these two girls get out and they start yelling at each other. I'm thinking they are not from the east side, because east side we don't talk.
Ain't no talking. Ain't no talking. Get your mind right.
On the floor, right?
Come
And
on
ask questions later.
We take off.
And then when they started fighting, they started pulling. I said, Sonny, let's go. I can't even watch this. We are on the east side, and this is going on? No, right?
Yes.
See, they know, the Bible says they know us by the fruit we bear.
That's
so
it.
we are, we are speaking civility. Our fruit better be.
You better believe it. You better believe it.
Right.
Civility comes in all shape, forms, and sizes, folks. And that's what we want you to know and understand. As we've been talking about, from hostility to civility, a cultural understanding of race and racism, there are things that you may have heard that you didn't agree with, and that's okay. There are things that you may have heard for the very first time. But the end state is not just the talk. It's all about solutions, bringing solutions to the table so that we can help them manifest. You know, as we've been talking today, I hope you understand and know that civility is the engine in which our world runs off of.
Yes.
It is time for us to stand up and set a standard, folks. I believe it in my heart. Dr. Linda Laura, I appreciate you. We're grateful to have you on. I'm talking about a firehouse. I don't know if you ever tried to drink water from a fire hose, but that's what you get, because it's coming at you rapid, it's coming at you real, and it's coming at you raw. I want to bring people back on right now, just to say thank you. Let me hold on one second. Wait. I gotta bring.
Oh, where's Turkey? Okay.
Yeah. And hey, what I want to do, I want to thank you all. This is so important that we engage this dialogue.
Yes.
And every one of you, Jackie, thank you so much for coming and bringing clarity. Dr. Anderson, man, just phenomenal start. Rebecca, Dr. Harper, you're just like a machine. I mean, just and Phineas. Guys, if the world could hear this, and Linda Laura drinking water from a fire hose, that's what you get. And you know, this will continue. What I want to do books on these things so we can leave our knowledge with people. And what's going to happen, Jacqueline, we're going to come up to Canada and be a part of helping bring change. And man, we just love all you guys. And Dr. Burnett, thank you so much for being a gracious host. You're phenomenal. And people, I have a solution, and that's civility for all.
Yes.
Dr. Burnett, over to you.
Blessings, and peace to all of you. Thank you so much for being on this panel today. We are super excited for what God is doing, how he continues to utilize us and strengthen each and every one of us. I challenge you to share this with your friends, share this with everyone, so that they can hear this dialogue and know that God is in control. So as we started off from hostility to civility. We are the solution. We're bringing this from an entire cultural stain that everyone needs to understand. They are important, they are seen, they are heard, they are valued. And we can do this if we continue to do it together.
Yes.
Together we can stand. As we do life together, life becomes better. So bring your best each and every time. We're grateful to have had all of you on. I am super excited about what is to come. Dr. Rebecca, I salute you. Dr. Linda Laura, I salute you. Dr. Sharon Anderson, I salute you. Jacqueline, I salute you. Phineas, I salute you. Thank you for
Thank
bringing
you.
your best each and every time.
Amen.
Why does this matter? When the world sees us and they see us together, what they will start to see is that there is unity within our communities.
Amen.
What they will start to see is we value unity over uniformity because we all come from different places. We all have a voice. We all have a platform. And it is time for us to bring that platform to our youth and to the next generation. And for some, pull back the other generation and help them to see. So I am grateful. I am thankful. I am hopeful. And I believe that we are the solution. So thank you all once again. We will definitely be in touch with you very, very soon. You will hear more from the Civility 360 platform. You will also be able to check out the YouTube channel and the various civility shows that are happening throughout the week. We are on the move. The I Have a Solution platform is going to be the solution that the world needs now. Sir Clyde Rivers, I want to share that two-part solution with the panel before we close.
Yes.
Share that with them if you would, sir.
There's two things that we're looking at in our I Have a Solution movement. The first is live the golden rule. Treat others the way you want to be treated. Number two is always ask the golden question. If the shoe were on the other foot, would I be okay with the same treatment? If the answer is no, you have a bad policy. Let's change the world.
Let's change the world, folks. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Blessings, peace, and productivity to everyone who has been on. Again, we look forward to engaging and dialoguing with you at all levels, and we're looking to come to every single state as we are able, as well as countries. We are ready for you. You all have a great night. Blessings and peace to you all.